Hey guys, what's up? Thanks so much for hanging out, and if you're a new subscriber, thanks for subscribing. I look forward to hearing what you all have to say, and thank you for liking the videos and sharing them out. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. I want to talk about just for a moment what is limerence. And the reason why we're discussing this topic is because it's something that comes up quite frequently when dealing with psychopaths and with dealing with narcissistic psychopaths, narcissistic sociopaths. I am a sociologist. I graduate from the top school in the country in sociology. I'm also a musician, but let's get to the topic. Limerence is an obsession, it's an infatuation with someone, it's a preoccupation with how do they feel, what are they thinking. It's creating an alternate storyline between you and that individual. It's creating a storyline between you and that individual which serves the purpose of obsession, essentially. Are you going through limerence if you've dealt with a psychopath or a narcissistic psychopath? Chances are you are not. Chances are you are not. It does occur, and we'll talk about how and why it usually occurs. But if you want to get an idea of what limerence is, picture back in the 1980s, 1990s. If you're not familiar with that area, just think about movies and television shows from that era, when they would show the girl who would have pictures and posters all over her wall of her favorite heartthrob boy group singer. Back in the 80s and 90s, it was really common to have posters and magazines and stickers for your favorite groups because we were a lot more into physical media back then. Well, you know the story where essentially she becomes obsessed with, let's say the guy's name is Joey J, some singer. And she starts developing a relationship in her mind where she creates fantasies and storylines of, oh, you know, he's gonna see me and he's gonna marry me. He's gonna see me and he's going to take me off to be his wife. And when we get together, we're gonna buy a house and we're gonna have 2 kids, and one kid's gonna be named Susie and one kid's gonna be named Frank. And she creates this whole thing. And essentially what ends up happening is when she encounters the person, she takes what he does as far more serious than what it actually was, right? So let's say he says hi and he kisses her hand and he signs an autograph. She might take that as, see, look, that means he wants to marry me. It's all coming true. And next time, you know, this is something that's going to be more common among people who are of high school, middle school. It's not going to be that common in adults because by the time we reach adulthood, certain parts of our brains have developed that have made us far more logical and practical. Are you suffering through limerence? Probably not. However, through the use of improper manifestation techniques, a lot of the ones that are being taught are completely wrong. They do create what I would call a pseudo-limerence, where they essentially teach that person to obsess and become infatuated with someone repeatedly and to even create storylines in their mind about how everything's going to work out. You just have to think positive. You just have to believe. Believe that you guys are already married. Believe that you guys are already together. All right, that's what I would call a pseudo-limerence, because there's a part of your brain that's fighting that. That's like, that's ridiculous, that's silly. And what they tell you to do, improper manifestation coaches, is to essentially shut down that logical part of your brain. That's not how you manifest, by the way. That's not how you manifest. There are a lot of things that go into it. I am going to do some videos down the line where we go into that, but you shouldn't have to fight your own mind. That's going to create anxiety, and it does work to an extent, okay? But it can put you in a really bad situation. All right. So when you're using those techniques of essentially wiping your mind and creating a storyline that best serves you, essentially, or what you think serves you, we'd have to do a 2-hour tape to do the breakdown. So I'm just going to give you the simple version. I don't recommend doing that. I don't. Don't create a storyline where you're going off and getting married, and when you're, you know, having 2 kids and you live in a beautiful home and everything's all right, and he's no longer going to be married to that woman, he's going to come marry me. Or she's no longer going to be with her husband. She's going to leave her husband and come back to me. Like, what could happen, especially if there are other things that are involved? We won't go too deep into the spiritual aspects right now. Is there can be situations that look exactly like what you think it is, but are far from it. Essentially, you can end up manifesting your own limerence or manifesting your own delusion. Let me explain how that works. So let's say you're a woman and you have a fantasy that someone you had an affair with is going to leave his wife and come and ask you to marry him. Or let's say you're a man and you have a fantasy that a woman that showed you no interest is now going to change her mind and ask you to go to the dance. If there are other things that are involved, this can actually happen, and it will look like that person is leaving their wife or that girl is asking you out to the dance. But what's actually happening is what I would call a demonic setup or entrapment. This is where things start to get really weird and really dark. So essentially, don't do it. Okay, if you want to manifest, there are way better ways of manifesting. Positive thinking is fantastic, but creating storylines and scripts when you may not know all of the different things that are going on with that other person. So for example, that other person might be into a drug addiction. That other person might be into a very violent form of behavior. That other person might be a scam artist. So back to the example of the woman, she does ask the guy out to the dance, and it looks exactly like what he envisioned, right? Like, wow, this is so cool. And it's only because she's trying to rip him off, or it's only because she's trying to set him up. Remember a few years back, there were a lot of stories about women who were very attractive, who would go out on a date with a man, seduce him, come to his home, and sometimes even become intimate with him. And then the next date, she would set him up by having a group of people come, and that was the end, unfortunately, for some of those guys' stories, or they were in a bad situation, right? So he might have thought, wow, he manifested this beautiful storyline, but what it actually was it was a trap. But it looked right, but it wasn't. The second part of that is, let's say the woman does have a fantasy where a man she was having an affair with leaves his wife and comes and marries her. And the man is extremely violent, and the man is cheating on her, and it's essentially hell on earth. This can happen, so please be careful with manifestation techniques. This is a warning. Are you going through limerence? Probably not. What is happening is, if you're experiencing thoughts where you think it may be something along those lines, it's your rational brain, it's your logical brain, it's your higher self. It's a part of you that's connected to something that's bigger and more positive, trying to warn you to stop. Can you manifest it? Yes. Will it be what you thought? Probably not. It could be something much darker, so be very careful, because things can happen where you're like, whoa, I never thought, and then it's, whoa, I never thought. So be careful. All right, talk to you guys later. Have a great rest of the day. Bye.